Welcome back, everybody, to another exciting episode of Aaron's Opinion, the podcast for blind people, where we speak about critical issues in the blindness community and all other issues from across the universe and galaxy. Let's go over to France today and say bonjour to our new friend, Sophie Renault. Merci. Sophie Renault joins us today, a great friend of Guillaume from Les Voyages à l'Aveuglette. And basically what really inspired me to contact you, in addition to and on top of the French aspect of all of this, is your motivation to be not only a French teacher, which is very special to me because I'm an English teacher, but you also have a tremendous motivation to be a bilingual and a multilingual person. You've studied a lot about various languages and things like that.
And I still do.
And you still do. Very good, very good. And the name of the languages that you have studied are escaping me at the moment.
So I studied English as a first language. Mm-hmm. Yes, I studied English. I started with when I was 6 years old. My mother bought me a cassette at the time because she was she saw I was very interested in languages because I was asking how do we say that in English, in German, in Spanish, and whatever. So with 6 years old I began to study English. But in France, when you get to school, you begin the first language at 11 years old. So but when I came to our college, which is your high school here, I knew the first year of the curriculum. So I got bored very, very rapidly. And then I had Spanish as a second language, but it was not my choice, because I would have preferred to study German. But I couldn't because the school where I was, the college, wouldn't transcribe the German books because the first blind students who were there before me had taken Spanish. So I had to study Spanish. And then when I came to our lycée, which is when you are 15 years old, I studied German as a third language.
Very good. Very good.
Yes. And then I moved to 2 years ago. I began to learn Italian because I met a friend through the Esperanto community, mm-hmm. And I'm active in the Esperanto community as well.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. I have found that with my French over the years, I started out in high school learning French and thinking that I couldn't speak French at all. And then when I started going to France a lot in my 20s, I discovered how much I love being able to speak French. And now when I have French students, I always love speaking French anytime I can get. And later today, towards the end, you are more than welcome to ask me a French question. If you've always wanted to ask me a question in French, you're more than welcome to ask me later. Simply though, we always...
Depuis combien de temps tu parles français? How long you've been
practicing French? Oui, exactement. Oui, je vous comprends. Depuis 15 années, 15 ans, exactement.
15 ans? Mm-hmm.
Oui, very exactement. Mm-hmm. Depuis lycée, comme vous. But of course, this podcast
comme toi, tu peux dire comme toi.
Exactement. But of course, this podcast is in English for a international audience, which leads me to this next question. A lot of people are good at languages, but you're obviously very, very overly gifted. You're obviously blessed with this ability to be a multilingual person. So talk about this really philosophize with me. What's going on inside your mind and inside your personality and inside your personnage that has led you to know that you have to be a multilingual person when
I don't know because I've always been interested in hearing songs in other languages and understand people and about multicultural people, the multicultural aspect of a language, because it's not the language about itself, but it also deals with interacting with people, how knowing the cultural differences, what they have in their minds, and because I've always been traveling a lot. Because I traveled with the company of my father, who worked in a company where they would draw the forks and everything that you need to eat. And we had the chance to travel each year, but they would let me miss a school week so that I could travel I would travel to Senegal, Canada, Turkey, the Canary Islands as well. And I always regret not to be able to communicate with those people. So I thought I'll learn English, Spanish, German, whatever language I can.
That's
And
wonderful.
I still have the plan to learn Russian because I would like to know not only the political aspect of what's going on now in Russia and so on, but I would like to be able to communicate with people from the lands like Russia, for example. I was in Serbia last year, and I would have been happy if I could speak a bit of Russian.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to learn also Japanese because I like, although I don't know it very well, I like Japan culture and Japanese gastronomy.
Absolutely. You are a ridiculously gifted individual. And I knew when you were speaking with Guillaume, I could tell, and I understood everything in that one. You did a great job in the French episode with Guillaume, and I understood.
It's wonderful because I did that for native French people. So, and I tend to talk very rapidly. I know too much.
Mais non, vous avez pas parlé trop lentement pour moi vous comprendre du tout. No, not at all. I know your speaking rate in that French seems like normal to me. So no, you did well with that. Although you said that you didn't think you did as well as you did. Speaking about Esperanto, so let's try to unfold I just hope you understand. I know that everybody says this to you, and I'm not saying it to you because you're a blind person. I'm saying it because I'm an honest person. You're a ridiculously gifted human being. I mean, there are very, very few people around the world.
I don't know.
No, I do know because the thing is, very few people have your motivation to learn languages. It's something is different inside your brain that allows you to remotivate
for me,
your mind.
It's a game. It's
like
there you go. Feeling, playing with words, playing with phrases, playing with the sounds, playing with everything.
Right. And that's what it is for me in French, is that I'm able to recreate part of my personality with the different French vowels and French sounds that we don't make in English. That's very, very, very interesting. So any chance you get to keep learning these languages, you should definitely do so, because there are many resources and it's very easy to learn languages now in many ways now. But
I don't agree, because the resources, it's difficult to find something very accessible. Because I use an app, website, in fact, which is called Busuu, BUSUU.com. And it's easy to use for me with an iPhone. But the app itself has a problem, because when you have to put the sentences into the right order, it doesn't work. It really doesn't work. So, and I had the problem because I use Duolingo. I don't like this app, because for me, it's just repeating, translating, and that's it.
Right.
You have no grammar, nothing. I don't like it. So I wouldn't say it's that easy. Or you can pay for whatever app, but I don't want to spend much money for that.
Right, absolutely. So, when we really think about what multilingual people do, there's translation and then there's interpretation. And translation is, of course, determining what words are in other languages, but interpretation is what you really want to be able to do, to be able to convey ideas and emotions in the other language. And that's where
I thought about being an interpreter, but I quickly realized it wasn't my thing, because I had to interpret and to translate the ideas of other people. It wasn't me who was speaking. So, but I had to get the right sense, which, also in my whole life, I'm not always capable to do that. So I prefer to go into teaching, which is
me too. And we'll cover that later. Okay. So let's talk for a few moments here about Esperanto, right? The language that I know a few things about, but not much about. So try if you can, and if you get stuck, I'll help you, but try to explain to the world here. What is Esperanto? What do you know? How did you start learning it? How does it work?
Yes, Esperanto is a language which has been invented sorry about that, but to replace English, because English was the dominant language, and so that people would be able to communicate and have peace with each other, and so that it doesn't become the mother tongue of anyone. So anyone would have a language simplified, which will let them communicate. So it was invented in 1887 by an ophthalmologist. Do we say that in English? Yes.
Yes, correct.
By a doctor,
right.
a Polish doctor, and he knew that people from Russia and so on wouldn't be able to communicate together, so he created this language.
Right.
But it wasn't the only language which was created like that. There were others which failed, and Esperanto is still alive, although you have 2 million people who can speak it fluently or not. But it's a community. The problem is that it's developed, but only in that community.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And it was created, Esperanto was developed because they thought, this Polish ophthalmologist thought, that you could create a language that anyone could learn that would be easy to learn. And of course, this is, as we say, the expression in English, this is an oxymoron, right? Which literally means this is a fallacy. It's a fallacy of intellectual, it's a fallacy, because if a language was easy, then it won't last for thousands of years and become a language. The reason why languages last is because they're difficult enough for other people to learn them. And the reason why we speak different languages is because we were isolated from each other. So when you really stop and think about it.
Esperanto is easy at the beginning, but it still has its exceptions. It still has his grammar. It has its culture, its community. Yes.
Excellent. So, what about irregular verbs in Esperanto?
Oh, it's very simple. That is very simple because, for example, the verb to be is esti at the infinitive form, and if you use the present, you will also always use estas. Mi estas, I am. Vi estas, you are. Li or she estas, he is, she is, etc. And if you use the future form, you will say not estas, but estos. And the past tense is translated by estis. For example, if I say,
interesting.
If I say I'm your friend, I will say mi estas via amico. If I want to say I'm your friend, but if I'm a woman, I won't say amico, I will say amicino. So yes, you will agglutinate suffixes or prefixes to create words.
Wow.
So for example, if you know the word house, which is domo, the nouns are always ends with o. Domo is house. You will use the augmentative to say a building. You will say domego. A small house, dometo, because et is the form which makes the things smaller. What can I say? If you know, for example, the name of an animal, you will know without learning it how to say the female name, the name of the baby of this animal, the name of its house, etc. And that makes the things more very, very, very easier.
So it's a language that seems to be based upon mathematical logic and these different logics of stressing different syllables. Yeah.
Yeah, and the origin of that, it has many Latin words in that, Latin roots, and also German and English, because when I heard it for the first time, although I didn't know any word, I could understand things thanks to German, especially.
Right. That's deeply fascinating. So how would somebody go about learning Esperanto, and how did you find out about ways to actually speak this and things like that? Like, how do you find communities where this is actually spoken, and how do people speak this language today?
Well, I heard a conference when I was at university about 20 years ago, And they told about Esperanto. They explained us how it worked, and I was interested in that, fascinated. So, but I didn't take the time after it to learn it. And then it was one day about now 3 years ago. I was in Toulouse, where I still live, and I said I decided to look for an association or club or just something which could teach me Esperanto. And I found training which would take place about 2 weeks later in the Pyrenees, which is about
les montagnes Pyrénées, exactement.
Yes, I don't know how do you say in English, but it's about 150 kilometers south from Toulouse. So I immatriculated in this training, and I went there, and I had the chance to be the only beginner in this course, because the others would speak all Esperanto, a minimum. So I was the only one with my teacher, and I learned very quickly, I can say, at my pace. So I would say within a weekend I could have a basic conversation. What do you do? What do you study? What do you live? What's your life? Elementary things I could do. I could say, and I could understand.
Sure. Well, that's fabulous. It's deeply, deeply fascinating. So when you start having these basic conversations, as you say, right? What, in essence, what types of topics are you talking about? When people use Esperanto, what do they like to talk about?
It can be everything. It can be IT, it can be literature, because it has its literature. It can be, I don't know, you can talk about sport, about politics, about whatever. But the aim of Esperanto is tolerance. For example, we have many people who are vegetarian, who are homosexuals, who are, I don't know, who live in a particular way which is not always accepted in the normal world, I would say.
That's interesting. Okay, I understand what you mean. So part of the philosophy of Esperanto is to impress upon people the importance of accepting others.
And of peace, of tolerance. And I wouldn't say that all Esperantists are like that. No, but the aim of that is building peace between people.
I think that's wonderful. I think that's deeply, deeply, deeply fascinating. Yeah.
And I take part in courses. For example, we have I was in Serbia last year thanks to Esperanto, for an Esperanto Congress of blind people, which occurs every year. And thanks to that, I take part in courses where I can improve my Esperanto online with the League of Serbian Esperantists. And we have also in Toulouse, we have an association which organizes language cafes, so that we can talk in Esperanto, or we can explain to people what it deals with. For example, we organize common meals, shared meals. You have a service which enables you to travel and to be hosted by Esperantists, really. You have music labels. Like people who register CDs and make music in Esperanto. What else? You have many families which were built thanks to Esperanto, couples which were created, children who learn Esperanto as babies, so it improves building bilingualism.
Absolutely. This is, this is so fascinating, because there are very few languages that were created with the intent of uniting people. And I think that's very touching and very, very telling about the future. Yeah.
You have some languages, but the projects or the languages were too complicated, or there weren't any resources to learn that. But it's the only one which is still alive.
Yeah, and it's the only one that's easy enough to learn,
Yeah.
but difficult enough to maintain structure. That's the
Yes.
thing. And
Yeah.
that's why oftentimes people learn French is because of the structure, like the endings and the conjugations and all that. And
You're very
uh,
courageous because French is the most difficult language
mais
in the
non,
world, I think.
non, non, pas du tout, pas du tout. Le français est facile pour moi tout le temps. Okay?
Yeah, for you,
But
maybe
actually,
it's
pour
easy for
moi,
you, but
il est très facile pour moi. But actually the hardest language to learn is English. Followed
yeah.
very closely by the Icelandic language. Islandske is ridiculously hard. Followed ridiculously by, of course, you know about the Croatian language and the languages of Croatia. And in Croatia, they speak over 232 languages in Croatia.
Yeah.
The Croatian language is bizarre. The Georgian language is bizarre. No, actually, French is really is not considered by linguists to be the most difficult to learn. But I would tell anybody, I would say every language is the hardest to learn because it's its own language is the answer. And to really be able to for me to go to France and have an adult conversation with someone is totally different from like a child. You know, the expectation, you know, now that I speak French at the level that I do, other French people expect me to say, well, they think, okay, well, now he can speak French, but now he has to act French. And now you have to learn the social norms and the social behaviors and the
And people
culture.
expect from you that if you can speak a language very well, you're not a native person. But people would expect from you that you understand everything. It's impossible because you can sometimes have idiomatic structures, which are unknown to you because you're a foreigner. You can't.
You know, a lot of them I can figure out over time. You know, a cute one to stress the way that oftentimes I play with languages the same way you played with Esperanto. I would break words into roots, right? Just the other day, about 2 days ago, one of my French speaking students used the word and will explain, and I'll explain it for the English. I'll explain it I'll explain it for the Americans in a minute, but he used the word il va ni. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And we were using it in a sentence, and I thought I knew what he was talking about. But then it occurred to me, I thought to myself, you know, that kind of reminds me of the word loin. Loin. I kind of heard of loin, the iloigny, you know. So then I thought far. Oh, and then we were talking about villages. Oh, that must have been rural. And then he looked it up and he was like, oh yeah, you're right. That is rural in English. So a lot of times I'm able to understand things as a bilingual person based on
Yes,
how they sound
but
or what
you're not.
words they
You are
understand.
an exception because for example, I have friends who came to France and they would listen to the radio France Culture, which is one of our national radio, for example. But when you can understand the radio, you come to the street in France and people would talk to you, but it's not the same at all.
Yeah, exactly. Because there's the formal French, the informal French. There's
Yeah.
the way that you would speak to someone over the radio. There's that
And
way.
we swallow the syllables when we talk, especially when you live in the north of France or when you come from the north of France, as I do, you would swallow everything.
I guess. I don't know. I think I understand you well, though. I mean, I didn't have the thing is, I didn't have any difficulty understanding
Yes,
you.
but you are not really. I can tell you, people have difficulty.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's interesting because you speak really well. I think you're a very dynamic speaker and very, very easy to understand.
But I'm not the only one. But really, for example, the word welcome, which is said bienvenue, we would say bienvenue.
Bienvenue.
You'll understand that, but not everybody.
Yeah, you would that's true. Up in the north, they do slightly kind of swallow the syllables, as you say, and they also talk a little bit faster too, and they definitely do. Yeah, that's the other thing with accent too, and accents is in America, there's people, and I'm not going to imitate it because I just don't do it, but there's people who have very distinctive accents, the Boston English, the New Yorker English, the Southern English. I mean, sure. Do you have that in French? Yeah, France has accents, but the reason why I think it's easier for me to understand is because in America, the accents are very dramatic. It's a very different, it's a totally different word. And in France, although I can tell the difference between regions now, the accents are less pronounced. It's less noticeable. It's not as big of a difference.
Where you'll go because
Sure,
I can tell
certainly.
you that some people, for example, some people who speak French, for example, as a second language, would have an accent. It can be difficult to understand.
Oh, sure.
And yeah. people who talk a regional language, for like in Alsace, for example, or Occitan, or I don't know, but as a French person, I don't understand everything, so
that's
I can
interesting.
figure out that.
Yeah. Or yeah, that's true. Yeah, there's of course l'Occitan, which was the ancient language of southern France. For people who don't know what that is, it's an ancient Latin, like, well, Old French is what it sounded like to me. I've heard it before, spoken on a YouTube video, and I'm sure there's still old people who can still speak it. They just don't speak it anymore.
There are clubs of Occitan.
Oh, that's cool. That's super cool.
For example, I don't speak it. I think I could understand it reading, but when I hear that, no, I can get a few words.
See, that's the thing. The writing systems between, the Francais that we speak now and Provençal and Occitan and other ancient French languages other ancient languages of the French people. Yeah, probably if they wrote, if they write, or how do I even explain it? It's hard to even say it in English. If I read what they wrote, I would probably understand what they wrote. But the vocalization would probably be very different, especially with the accents and the emphasis on syllables. And that's the thing about which syllable gets emphasis and doesn't. And yeah, I mean, you could totally say a sentence in Occitan that I wouldn't understand. But then if you typed it out, I would say, well,
I can't, because I can't.
Are you probably, I would be able to use my language brain's sense of logic to say, well, what does this probably mean? Or how do I get it close enough to understand what they're probably talking about? That's deeply fascinating. So, when you were at these, Esperanto clubs and things, so are the types of people who come to these things, are they all like professional linguists who are either interpreters or
not at all. No. You have young people who come to do a civilian service, who are here for 1 year, and they would stay 6 months in Toulouse and then 6 months in an Esperanto club abroad. So we have partnerships with Poland, with the Czech Republic, and with Italy. So we have every type of people, young people, a bit older. But I would say with internet, many young people come and learn. Yes. Yeah. Right. But the problem is that the diffusion, because I can see that not many people know about Esperanto, and not many people know about its existence, and we have a bit skeptical reactions like, isn't it a sect? But no, not at all.
Right, exactly. And that is very, very interesting. And most, I mean, I knew it was right away when I read the title of Le Voyage à l'Aveuglette. And when I read the title, when I saw it with Guillaume, I was like, oh my God, I got to listen to this. Like, I knew what it was immediately. But I'm a language person, and I have a fixation with language acquisition and language teaching. So that's right at my alley. I think you're right. I think the majority of people would not know what it was initially or right away. But
I tried to explain to friends of mine what I was doing with Esperanto, and I would say, if you take any pleasure, that's good. So they wouldn't understand the essential, the values of Esperanto.
I mean, it's very valuable to me because we need to learn. Mainly, it's valuable to me because we need to learn to be kind, and we need to learn to be united. And I think that's the takeaway.
Open-minded and tolerant.
Yes, open-minded and tolerant about and tolerant about the right things too. There is a difference between being tolerant towards. There's a difference in my intellectual mind, and you may of course not agree. That's fine, but in my mind, there's a difference between being tolerant to everything and being tolerant to the right things.
Yeah, that's
but
true.
We also have, in my estimation, we have serious social issues in the United States right now where certain behaviors or certain things are being either overly tolerated or not tolerated enough. And I'm not here to debate it. I'm just saying that right now in America, and I'm sure it's the same in France, is that there's serious social problems right now.
Yes.
Absolutely. But you're incredibly right. So, wow. So how many other American people have you met who are learning Esperanto?
One. one girl who came to France, but I don't know about the Esperanto, how it's spread in the United States.
Well, apparently I think there's only one person then, I guess, right? If you only met
No,
one?
no. There are clubs, there are things, but I'm not in relation with that.
Well, I mean, probably they're on Facebook or probably they're in WhatsApp groups. Yeah, are there a lot of WhatsApp groups for this type of thing that congregate around this thing?
Telegrams, because it's private, so people tend to use Telegram. But the problem is for us that, for example, the iPhone app is not accessible. Oh. You can use it with PC with an NVDA client, and you can use it with Android, but with iPhone no.
That's deep. That's really fascinating. Yeah, I mean, here in the States, I mean, as you can tell, we at Aaron's Opinion, we just basically live and breathe WhatsApp. So after today, you'll be added. I'll send you the links to my 2 groups that I have, and you are so welcome to connect with all of our members from all the other guests from all over the world, and they'll be so happy to have a French person. We've had very few French people over the years. So
what do you talk about in these groups?
Well, there's 2 groups that you'll be added to. You'll be added to a private group for guests, and then you'll also be invited to join a public WhatsApp community for Aaron's Opinion, which is basically the public WhatsApp feed for Aaron's Opinion. So you would be able to talk to the public and things like that. And joining them is both optional and things like that. And there's also a Facebook group and things like that I run. Once we get to know each other better, you'll see that I have a list of products that you can join and certainly share your knowledge, because we need these things to be well understood, globally. Absolutely. So that's the other thing I wanted to talk to you about, right? So we're both teachers. I teach English as a second language, and you've chosen to teach French. So teaching French so how did you get into teaching French? Who do you teach? And talk about your philosophy about language acquisition. What do you really think?
Well, I had a university degree, in French as a foreign language in 2013. And I did this training online. It was a partnership between our corresponding teaching system and the Alliance Française, which is a French company, French Alliance, which is a group of schools who teach you French and who learn you how to be able to teach. But the training itself wasn't that accessible. So I had to scan many documents to be able to understand, and the phonetic acquisition and so on. And it was a 1-year course, and I got the diploma. And then I had the chance to replace 2 teachers in a school for, a professional center, I would say, vocational center for blind people. And I taught French to French people, but not only. So it was about grammar, about a bit of literature as well, and also a bit of pronunciation for people who were foreign people, but who already spoke French, because our structure was not specialized in French for foreigners. And then I began gradually to decide to teach to individuals, because I prefer teaching to individuals, because the level is different. You can adapt to the activities or the interest to the person you are talking to. And I went to, at the time I lived in Paris, I went to the whole Parisian region, which is called Île-de-France. And then I took public transport, etc. And I went to people. I taught to teenagers. I helped them for the school, for the homework in French. And I also had people who, blind people who wanted to learn French. And I began to teach online, because it was an international audience.
Really good. Really, really excellent. Yeah. Yeah. So, if somebody doesn't really know anything about the French language, what are some things that you have noticed or that you would say that, make the French language stand out for people who are learning it? And how do you go about, if you were to teach a foreigner, like an American person, if you were to teach an American French who needs to learn it, how would you do that?
I would start explaining the aim, the pronunciation, which is difficult, especially for English people. I would show the stressing system, because French is a language which is really linked. We link every word to each other, and you have to distinguish two words with one another. So I would begin to making people read, for example, and showing them the melody of the language. And then I'll gradually learn to teach them how to introduce themselves and talking about hobbies, etc. And then my aim is really to adapt to what interests people at the moment, what they like to do, and not impose, not giving them tasks or work which they wouldn't appreciate at all. For example, if somebody is not, I don't know, he doesn't like cooking, I won't talk about food and cooking, and you know what I mean?
Okay. Interesting. So have you taught Americans French before?
No. I taught French to German people, Italian, Serbian, but not American.
That's a very interesting juxtaposition, I guess. It's a very silly, it's very endearing. Yes, you taught French to German people, the language, the Deutsch language, which always has the reputation of, people always say it sounds ugly and mean. And actually, I don't think that at all. Actually, I think Deutsch sounds beautiful. I
love German.
I love hearing German people talk. I think it's a beautiful, strong, graceful way of talking, actually. Yeah. Especially the Viennese dialect spoken in Vienna, in Wien.
I really had problems with that. Yes.
That is so cool.
I was in Austria.
So it's like this. It's basically, for American people who don't know what I'm talking about, the Viennese German, the German that is spoken in Austria, is this melodic, soothing, basically this romantic French-like German that they speak there. Yeah, it's not quite as abrupt sounding as the German from Deutschland, from Germany. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
It's difficult to understand.
Probably. Yeah, probably so. Very good. Very, very good. Okay. So now what do you do now though? So now are you still considered to be a French professor, and do you still run French courses when you can?
Yes,
how do you? Okay.
Yes, but I prefer doing that through language exchanges individually, because I talk for example, with English people, German people, Italian people, and I teach French to whoever wants. And in exchange, people would give me some English classes or Italian classes, Spanish as well. I did.
Okay, good. That's really good. Yeah. So how is your Italiano? What level of Italiano are you now, and how confident of Italian
I began to learn Italian about 2 years ago. But when I began, I had an aunt and an uncle who was Italian. So I knew about, well, for example, I knew the numbers, I knew something, what's your name, etc. But I started from zero. So, but now I'm not far from being bilingual.
Okay. Good.
And Italian is I wouldn't say similar to French, but there are many things you can understand.
Right. There are many relatable things. If you already speak French, Italian has some relatable elements. Absolutely. Yeah, that's really fascinating. And what part of Italy is your Italian friend from?
From Florence.
Florentina, right?
Yes.
Yeah, very good. Very
good.
And
I went 3 or 4 times in Italy with my parents. I went to Rome. I went to Torino.
Right.
Also for an Esperanto Congress.
Okay.
Yes, because we have global Esperanto Congresses every year.
Very good.
This year, for example, it will be in Czech Republic. I won't take part in that because it's a very big event. It's too big for me, but
I understand. Well, I guess what's the biggest Esperanto gathering ever? Do they hold events for thousands of people? What's the largest one ever?
Yeah, ever, I don't know, but the Universal Esperanto Congress occurs every year. And but for example, last year it was in Tanzania. They had over 3,000 people who came.
Right. Yeah. That's really, really fascinating. So did you go to Tanzania?
No, I wouldn't. I couldn't because it was too expensive, and I won't spend too much money for Esperanto.
Oh, okay.
Because no,
because
it was only 1 week, so no. Because you have to find, if you don't want to travel on your own, you have to find someone who would accompany you. You have to pay for that companion,
right?
And it's not always easy.
Right. Excellent. Very, very good. Yeah, that is really good. Really good to know all this. Yeah. And how many times have you been to the United States?
I transited once when I went to Mexico. I flew through Washington, but to the United States themselves, nothing, never.
Okay.
Never. I would like to.
And what can you tell me?
I'd like to do a road trip, for example, to discover bluegrass music, which I really like,
Okay.
country music, and everything about racial segregation, which interests me very, very much.
Right.
So I'd like to go to the South, for example, and also to New York, because for me it's a fascinating city.
Sure.
And,
Absolutely.
And to discover a bit your food, your gastronomy, because I think it must be possible to have a good food in the US, no?
It really depends on the state you live in and the time of year. I mean, there's a lot of diversity with food. Yeah. I mean, it all depends. Where in Mexico did you go, and what was your experience in Mexico?
Well, I went there in 2013, and I lived with I traveled with an agency which never took blind people with them. We were a small group of 6 people, and we went from Mexico to Cancun. So it's about a tour of 3 weeks.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. And I was guided by a friend of the guide who took him along, and he was there for me, in fact.
Okay.
But I didn't pay him. I didn't pay for that.
Right. I understand what you mean. Yeah. And
but the trip was quite expensive because it was a small group, and we went into communities. It was a stress on history, on gastronomy, on everything, cultural travel. But I had the only problem I had is that the guide wouldn't understand that I needed to touch things.
Yeah,
And
that's very hard for
sometimes I
people to
didn't have the
understand.
time to touch, and well.
Right. I do understand that, but that's a very subtle thing for somebody to understand. Yeah.
Yeah.
And were you able to speak Spanish well enough at that time too? That's good.
Yeah. I would say to communicate with people, yes, but I'm not bilingual in Spanish. I would say among the language I speak, I think Spanish is the worst one.
I see.
Yeah, but I can talk, I can communicate, I can make me understand, but well, I wouldn't say I'm a bilingual Spanish speaker, no.
Right. Absolutely.
But something happened to me. It was when I was in the Maya community, for example, people would understand and speak Spanish. They interacted with my sighted friends of the group, but I tried to talk to them in Spanish. They wouldn't understand. They wouldn't respond to me. As a blind person, I don't know why. I never figured out why.
Yeah.
Because everybody understood me, but I think, or maybe it was a story of karma or something.
That thing. And this is a stereotype of the First Nations people, and this is a stereotype that this is an ongoing problem, that blind people and disability in developing countries is a big deal for them. It's seen as a curse. It's seen as it's heavily misunderstood. So this is a big deal.
I didn't have the same experience when I went to Indonesia. I went to Bali in 2010. And people were very communicative, very attentive, everything. Although I didn't know Indonesian, which was very frustrating for me because I would have liked to, but people didn't have that type of reaction.
Right.
No.
Sure. Yes, their language is known as, Bahasa Indonesia, and it's considered to be one of the easiest languages, if you want to learn a language that comes from Asia, that's where you should start, because the logic and the grammar is very similar to English, and it's not really similar to French, but it's very similar. Well, actually, if you want to speak Indonesian, just talk to Guillaume. Have Guillaume teach you.
I know.
Yeah.
Yes.
He explained that whole fascinating
thing. If Guillaume creates his travel agency, I would like to go with them and to go back to Indonesia, because I really enjoyed my trip.
Right. Well, I'm not sure you need a travel agency for that. I just think you need to call up Guillaume and say, "Hey, man, when are you going back to Indonesia? Because I'm coming."
No, but he wants to create his agents and make tours, and no, I would like to help him and go with the project.
That's deeply, I found Guillaume to be deeply fascinating as well, with all of the knowledge that he has about Indonesian culture and how he wants to live there. And I mean, Americans go there, but not often. So we don't know, we don't know much about Indonesia. So it is a very mysterious and a very interesting society. We've heard of the place, but we usually don't go, really, really, really fascinating. Okay. So, Sophie, how do you live now? What would you say about, your life now? And the other thing that was confusing me is, so now, do you live in Paris or do you live in Toulouse, and how are you living?
I live in Toulouse with my companion, my girlfriend, and with her guide dog, which, I have the advantages but I have the advantages because the dog guides us too, both of us. Right. My friend is also blind and hearing impaired. I have also problems for walking, but we lived together about now 13 years ago. We began to live together.
Great, good.
So, and
how did you?
I live as a teacher.
And what does she do?
She was a trainer for IT for blind people, but she has health problems which prevent her from working too much.
Understood. Yes. Very good. So you guys live together and enjoy your life, and that's really,
and she took part, and also she doesn't speak Esperanto well, but she took part in 2 or 3 things in Esperanto. She went with me to Poland, to Italy, and twice in Italy and once to Poland.
Very good. Very, very beautiful.
So we took part in a project for inclusion blind people in Esperantist events.
Super good.
Yeah.
And so how are guide dogs these days in France? What can you tell me about guide dog culture? I brought my guide dog when she was alive. I had a guide dog years ago, and she went to France with me. And I find that French people are really accommodating to guide dogs. So talk about that. What have you found about guide dog culture in France?
I would nuance that a bit, because when you take Uber, for example, you have that in the United States. We had so many refuses.
This has been,
drivers.
It's an ongoing battle in the United States. This is a constant issue in the States right now. Absolutely.
And if you take an Airbnb, for example, we'd like to go to Paris, but we found some flats, but you have to ask about the dog. Would it be accepted? And the hairs and everyone. And how would you how would you clean the apartment because you have the dog hairs and so on.
Right.
I would say in restaurants we don't have many problems. No. In shops there are still people who are refused because of their dogs.
Right. I mean, this is a problem. This is a huge problem there, and it's a huge problem in the United States. I mean, it's a problem because there's always ignorant people. So that's mostly what it's about. There's always problem people and people with problems. That's a never ending thing. Absolutely. Yeah.
But also when you walk with a cane, it's a lot, always more difficult because you have many obstacles, many works, many holes in the street and everything. True. And people who are phoning and not looking in front of us or behind them. And you will walk against some people, then they would shout to you because you bumped into them. It's always difficult to walk in the street, and I've done it. Getting worse and worse.
Well, it's not. Perhaps, Sophie. I think what it is each year as you get older and older, you notice more and more. You just keep noticing more and more.
I don't know. I don't know.
It might be getting worse. I mean, you might be on. I mean, I've been to France many times with and without a guide dog, and I find that French people, from my perspective as the American guy, I find that the French community is a lot nicer and a lot kinder and a lot more accommodating and a lot more understanding. Generally, we've had, there's always been the oddballs every few years, just like anywhere else. There's always weird people. I mean, usually, you know, we've had stayed in many Airbnbs, and we've only had one host in all the years we've been to France that was weird. We only had one weirdo. So that's a pretty good record. You come for years and years, and every once in a while you get someone that has a tantrum or has some sort of personal issue, but in comparison to the United States, I find that French people are generally more predictable and generally more accommodating. But that's only my perception. It's not necessarily
for example,
true.
Parisian people are really not appreciated in the world. But for me, from my perspective, I really liked Paris because people are helpful, really, for me.
Sure.
Sure. And I went with an Italian friend to Paris, and she said the same. That she had the impression that people were accommodating and helpful, and many more, I would say, than in other cities.
I don't know. I wouldn't. It's hard to compare city to city. I don't know. Maybe because Paris is more globalized, maybe, and they have more tourism. Yes, perhaps, maybe. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's really good. And what type of dog does your partner have?
A flat coat retriever.
Okay. Interesting. Interesting. Very nice. Very nice. Yes. How old is that retriever? How old is the dog?
6 years old.
Oh, lovely. Pretty young.
It's a female dog. Yes.
Right in the middle of her life. That's so good. So sweet. Yeah. Yeah. And do you have a desire to have a dog or any pet or any?
No, because I have problems with the balance, and I'm not very. I'm a bit. I'm not very at ease with animals in general. So I prefer letting them to people who like animals and who can treat them well. But no, it's not for me.
Yeah, I understand. It's always a big issue. A lot of people seem to have a difficulty taking care of animals, and then you wonder, well, why do they have it if they can't care for it? That's always an issue. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, really, really good. And so what are some of your hobbies, some of your pastimes that you like to get into when you're not teaching or not doing Esperanto stuff?
I take part twice a week, about 4 hours and 5 hours every day, to a club or a gaming club, which is the reproduction of a game which is well known here in France. So it's like quizzes, but difficult quizzes about general knowledge.
Okay.
And yes, we meet, we do some competition, and there are tournaments which we do in the whole country.
Right. So it's like trivia.
4 or 5 times a year, we go to other parts of the country and compete, and
Excellent. That's super good. Super good.
And I'm the only blind person in my club. I feel good, integrated, and that's the most important thing. And one of my hobbies also is reading. I read lots of books about my preferred genre, for example, of reading is dystopies. I don't know if you, for example, The Handmaid's Tale, or books like that, or science fiction and novels and testimonies, biographies, for example.
Those are very, very compelling. Absolutely. I love science fiction. Absolutely. Yeah.
But I don't read poetry, for example. I don't like that. Or philosophical books. No, it's not my thing.
I do understand, except for the fact that a lot of philosophers are also linguists and are also bilingual and multilingual people. So there is some logic to be studying, philosophical texts and things like that. Yeah, absolutely.
But I don't do that. I don't like. I don't enjoy it.
That's fine.
Yeah. And, what do I do? I also like visiting museums, going to theater, concerts, For example, classical music, world music, folk, rock, country music, bluegrass, gospel. Also, going to restaurants is very important for me. Like
Of
eating,
course.
but not cooking, but eating. And traveling. What else? Yeah. Reading things about psychology, for example.
Yeah.
Well.
Super good. Super good. So, how much podcast listening do you do, and how many other podcasts have you been on over the years to talk about your beautiful mind?
You're the second one.
Just
the first
second
one was Guillaume.
Really?
The second one is you.
Wow.
And I listen to some podcasts in Italian, for example, which is a podcast for foreign people in simple Italian, but not too simplified. And the guy always deals with interesting themes. Right. And I listen to podcasts about the society, the French society, the psychology, I have my cycles. Sometimes I listen to podcasts, sometimes not.
Right.
And I also watch many things, films with audio descriptions, if I can find it.
Yeah.
Because it's less developed than in the US, for example.
Yeah. No, I've never experienced that. I mean, I know what you're talking about, where if you can watch a film in the States and it's has audio narration that says what's going on I mean, I'm sure they have that in French society. I've just never heard it before. But
yes,
yeah, is that robust or
not that much as
not that much?
No.
Yeah.
And
it takes a lot.
Although I speak English, it's still difficult for me to watch something in English, because you would have, you will hear a lot of slang about a lot of things, which I prefer watching a film in English, for example, if I know the story, if I know the topic, if I saw the film in French.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's why it's important as a multilingual person that before you engage a conversation with somebody, right, you need to think about what vocab will they say? What section of talking are we going to talk about? Because the chances of me needing to use most of my French vocab is not very high, right? To be able to have a conversation in a second language.
It's still your second language.
It's not
your mother tongue. Mother tongue is mother tongue.
Right. And that will always exist. That French will always be my second language, no matter how well I speak, Yeah. So you have to decide.
You didn't grow bilingual, so.
That's true. I didn't grow up bilingual, but I've decided to be a bilingual person now that I'm an adult. That's true. Yes. That is.
Because when you were born, you have, for example, one of your parents who talks to you into French and the other into English. Well, you wouldn't make any difference. You would be able to speak the two languages at the same level. Right.
Well, maybe each child is different and things like that. It has to be done just right for the child to be able to be functioning bilingual and things like that. Yeah. And every family is different. Every person is different. Some people are able to do it and others not. It just depends upon the person. But now that I am a bilingual English-French, I'm very appreciative of it and always enjoy French questions and interacting with people in French. So what are some questions that you want, that you really want to ask me about, like who I am as a person and my podcast and my experiences in life? Like, what do you really want to know about me?
Why is French your favorite language, and how did you come into learning French? And do you have other languages which you appreciate?
Well, I came into learning it because my parents told me to learn it. So I didn't have a choice, just like anybody else. I needed to get through schooling and university. Yeah. And there were many challenges with my schooling and university, but I was able to get through it. And then we started going to France when I was in my 20s. And then I discovered that not only am I able to speak French, but French people answer me. And then I'm able to have interactions with people. And then I started to become, those are French people. That's actually pretty cool. That's actually kind of interesting to be able to interact. And then once I became more comfortable with expressing myself in all the tenses, like passé composé, présent, futur, all the tenses that we need. And once you're able to use all the tenses in the language, then the conversations can get more more meaningful to say like, well, last week we did, and here's what happens in my past, and now I'm working on this, and now I'm working on this in the future. Yeah. So I'm sure that you want to see what will happen. Do you want to try to ask me some questions in French and try to chat a little bit in French and see what I say? I'm sure you want to ask me a French question.
No, because it's in an international audience, so
okay.
no, I wouldn't. No. But
okay.
How can you make a living with your podcast, with your groups, and does it help you does it contribute to your living?
Well, that's a totally different question.
Yes.
Yes and no. Okay. There are very few people who make money as a podcast. Okay. What has happened, and this is a fascinating concept, and this really gets us off the beaten track, but it's a wonderful concept. You would have to research it to understand this, but there are very few podcasters who are able to make a full-time living as a podcaster. It's primarily based upon, well, how big is your audience size? And what has happened is that since the pandemic, which is where Aaron's Opinion began during the pandemic, right? Since then, there has been a flood of new podcasts. Literally millions of them have flooded into the system. And basically, before the pandemic and in the early 2000s, very few people were podcasting, and a couple of them figured out that you can market a podcast to a company and actually sell things and make money. And very few people have figured that out. So what has happened is the people at the top of that pyramid are still at the top, and everybody else is trying to move upwards. So the answer is, over time, can you build an audience? Sure. Can you have a great product? Sure. Are you going to make a full-time living? Almost certainly not. Yes. Do we make a little bit of money here at Aaron's Opinion? Yes. But is it enough to live off of? No. But it's a wonderful hobby. And what I tell people is, I'm noticing, right, that as I'm getting more blind people from other countries, I'm noticing that we need to have these conversations, that these conversations are fascinating and have a lot of meaning for people. And that's what I have consistently noticed over the years, is that blind people really need to talk about these different issues. So that's kind of the why behind what I do. Yeah.
Good. And how do you find your students?
How do I find my students? Okay. That's a totally different thing. So the students part. So what happened?
I tend to have a thought, and I would ask the question. It's a bit you like
to jump around.
Tree mind. Like
you
in
go
French
from
we say pensée arborescente, like you have an idea which comes to another idea.
Right. You build, your brain builds, you build bridges between your thoughts. Yes. Absolutely. So what was happening with that was, when I was in university, I was studying international relations, and I soon discovered, after I graduated from that program, that international relations was neither a good major for me, nor was it anything I was interested in, nor did I have the social skills and social contacts to be a diplomat in the embassy, which is what you would think of when you think about international relations and things like that. Now, for an American person to work in an American embassy, it's ridiculously hard. That's like the hardest job you could ever apply for, is that one. That's the chances of you being elected as a politician are easier than being a diplomat. That's the diplomat job. The foreign service is the hardest one. So I soon realized that I needed to start working anyway, and I just needed to go about my business. And I realized that I really enjoy languages and talking. And so then from there, I realized, well, a lot of people need to learn English and things like that. So that's kind of how I got into where I am now, is that a lot of people around the world are learning English and need English. And now you need to have English to be successful. So I work for 2 different companies. One is a European one, and one is based in the States, and they provide one-on-one English lessons where I meet online in a similar platform to this. And basically
is it individuals or grouped lessons?
Individuals, one-on-ones. And that's how I'm able to really build a strong, student teacher relationship with the people and build rapport with the students. Yeah. That's a very important skill, is the ability to build rapport over a period of time. Absolutely. Definitely. Yeah.
But the companies give to you the students.
Correct. And so they're online companies that have international bases of students who are coming to the company to learn, and they scroll through the list of tutors and teachers, and over time you earn reviews, and you move up, and you have more students that request you, and You do well, and then students notice you more and more and more. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But is it like here in France? Does the money you get as a blind people diminish if you work too much?
I understood your question, but I understand what you're talking about. How do I even express it? So each year I have to tell the government how much I make, and then you fill out forms each year, and based upon that, the government says, okay, Mr. Richmond, you owe, X amount to the federal government, you owe X amount to the state where you live, and you owe X amount to your locality, your town, your local administratives. And when you pay that money properly each year, then you're good. So that's kind of how it works. So the answer is, I knew what you didn't, in all honesty, you didn't ask it correctly, but I knew what you were trying to ask, which is, yes, in the States, blind people who work have to pay taxes if you meet certain thresholds, as we say. If you make a certain amount each year, then it's a threshold, and then the system says, oh, okay, you do owe money because you made X amount. But obviously, just like in French society, the vast majority of blind people never work.
Yes,
and
we have an issue here in France.
It's a big problem.
We say we earn a certain amount of money as blind people,
right.
And if you work, you will get this money taken off. They will remove from you. There was one part of the money that you wouldn't become if you work. That you wouldn't get.
Right.
So many people say we have many difficulty to find a job, to stay in this job, to evolve in this job. So they will say, no, I prefer not working and living with what I earn, and that's it.
Yeah, because what has happened, and a lot of blind people say that in England too, is they say that it's easier and less stressful to just, unfortunately, and I'm not faulting the blind people for thinking this way. In some situations, it is in essence actually easier for them to just take the money that they're given, which is a huge philosophical and fundamental problem, because that gives the idea that blind people are dependent upon others. It's the wrong Yeah, it's still the wrong idea, but I understand where if blind people are just never being hired enough times, I can understand where a blind person in France would think that that's acceptable. Now, in America, we would also on one hand say, well, you need to try to work. But then again, blind people, the other problem is, Sophie, and I'm sure you understand, blind people are discriminated against so severely that the discrimination, and this is a very hard thing for other people to understand, is that in other words, let me put it to you like this. If you grow up your whole life thinking that you're stupid and that you can't do things and that you can't work, well, guess what? By the time you're 30, you start telling people that you're too stupid to work. Because for the same philosophical reason, that it's better to tell the truth, but if you lie your whole life, you always told the truth. In other words, lies are true just as long as you only tell lies. So when you believe it long enough, of course it's true that the person can't work, which is a huge, huge philosophical wrongful problem. It's wrongful, it's offensive, it's a huge problem. But unfortunately, until enough blind people resist that philosophy and demand work, until they place a demand on society, and until blind people are in leadership positions in society, in public places, then it's going to perpetuate and be a bigger and bigger problem. But this is a huge issue in the United States. And the reality is,
not only.
Well, it's an issue anywhere it happens. It's wrongful in France and it's wrongful in the United States, right? So what would happen is the blind person would live with their parents, and then when mommy and daddy die, you go live with your brother. You go live with your uncle. You're this person. You're that person. But you're never truly independent, and that's why it's philosophically wrong. So you would either end up you would end up living in somebody else's house for your whole life is how you would end up. Now I don't know. Maybe you would, okay, find a part-time job in the community. Maybe they'd set you up working at a coffee shop. Maybe, and that can happen. That's fine. No harm there. You might have part-time work and that's good, but it's, it's not the right idea. And you understand that. And I understand that. But I think it's very hard for other people who are not blind. I think it's very hard for us to translate that concept to someone who's not blind, is what I'm saying.
No, and someone who is blind and who never had any difficulty because this person can do everything or almost everything and wasn't discriminated against. They wouldn't understand and they wouldn't tolerate that some people react the other way.
That's another, you know what? That's a very subtle thing that you brought up. You're very right. And when I was a child, I was always taught to be independent and to just go about my business and not let the blindness impact me. And you know what, Sophie? You're very right. You're a brilliant thinker, because now that I'm in my 30s, these social things of discrimination and people not agreeing with me, I'm starting to notice more. And it's starting to get worse, or I'm starting to notice more. And I think it's both, that this is how society is. It's just when you're a child, you don't notice. Children
I
don't
think
notice.
The older you get, the more you notice it, and the more you take care about it.
Yes, that and that. Correct. The more it's noticeable.
And the more you react, and the more you say, no, I won't let me tell that. I won't let me go on me, and I will shout if I have to shout, and I will have conflict with a person. It doesn't mind, but
yeah. I mean, that type of thing tends to depend. I found that with people who have discriminated against me, I've found that that's another thing that blind people have to think about, right? Do you really want to work for someone who discriminates against you? For me, no. Well, for me, no. Other blind people would say, no, I'm going to force you to work with me so that you can learn how to treat me. Well, okay, fine. If that's your thing. My thing is, because my philosophy is I'm not going to reward bad behavior. So if someone is going to be discriminatory, I'm just going to ignore it and just, for the most part, not give them my money or not give them my attention, but that's me. Every blind person has their own philosophy about when to push and when to stand back. It's very hard to tell. There's no
right answer.
That's the problem.
No right behavior.
It's hard for me too. It's hard for me to tell a lot of times I have to tell myself, okay, shut my mouth, take a deep breath. And other times in my heart, I'm like, exploding or, literally about to just completely snap, as we say in English, on the person. But then I have to think, well, they aren't going to, because if someone discriminates against you, they're never going to understand you. That's kind of the philosophy. Now, some people change, some people, learn and some people make changes, and that's great for them. But mostly I've found overwhelmingly in the United States that discrimination is consistent. If they consistently discriminate, they discriminate. If they consistently accept you, then they're always accepting. So there's not really much of a middle ground in between that, I've found. Yeah. So have you connected with other blind people around France who are successful like you and who work? What have you found?
Yes. Yeah, I have friends who worked. I have friends who worked as trainers, as teachers, as physiotherapists, but I also have friends who never worked because they never find any job, and I have friends who worked as a beginning, but who decided to, for example, to stop working and to take care about their children.
Right. Okay.
Because I have a friend, for example, I have a friend who has 4 children, and she didn't work because she didn't find, and she decided to take care about her children. That's her right.
Sure. Well, that's fine. Yeah. And have you spoken with other blind people in France who are have their own families and are living independent lives? Oh, good.
Of course.
Good.
Yes. I have some blind people, for example, who live with sighted people, some people who live alone and take care about the children. You have, yes, it depends. Some couples of blind people who have children or not. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very good. Very good. Yeah, yeah. And how easily are you able to, to travel around France? Like say you're in Toulouse and let's say you want to go to another city. How does that really work for you guys?
I
Yeah.
can
Mm-hmm.
easily travel with public transport. It's not a problem for me.
Mm-hmm.
And also with the metro and RER in Paris, etc. Or in
Right.
Toulouse. In Toulouse, we have a service, a very good service of adapted transport for blind people, and it helps. It helps a lot because, for example, my gaming club is far away from the house. It's about 15 kilometers. It's at the other end of the city in a small town, and I would take it much time to get by bus. So I prefer to
Mm-hmm.
use this transport. In the streets, I'm not, for mobility, I'm not the best one, I would say. But,
Right, right. Because
and
you have some.
my orientation is not the best.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
no, I prefer, for, for using, public transport, it's not a problem.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I've taken a lot of trains in France and that's the other French thing too. When I go into the train, they always like help me to sit down. I've noticed that French people have a fixation with
Yes.
that on the trains. That's now
Yes.
to an
And we have an
American.
assistant service which works
Yeah.
well.
But French people are very aware of it, and they point out the seats, and they show me where to sit. And now, to an American person, that's not appropriate because you don't. We Americans like it's like don't tell me where to sit. That's not kind. But I understand that it comes from the right place in their heart. So I've learned to understand that socialism, that French behavior.
Mm-hmm.
French people are different. There's some behaviors that are very weird that French people do to Americans that an American has to get used to. Absolutely. Yeah,
Yes.
definitely.
How? Can you give an example, for example?
I mean, just the social constant things, like always saying bonjour when you enter a building or a store,
Yeah.
you face the person, you have to say hello when you go in.
Yeah. And not in America.
Never.
No. Oh.
Never. It's weird. It's weird. So that's why Americans have to practice,
Okay.
Or the other French thing that I have to practice is knowing and figuring out when it's okay for me to address someone in French and when I have to start in English. That's always confusing because, French people are weird. There's not really, either with my French, now in Paris, everybody speaks to me in French. When they heard my French, they spoke to me the whole time in French in Paris.
Yes.
But in other cases, I don't know, sometimes French people like to practice English, but then I can't understand their English. So then I have to figure.
Yes.
So there's always awkward.
Because they have an accent and, well.
Your English is very clear. You speak perfectly crystal clear. Sophie, the one excuse you're never going to be able to give here in the Aaron's Opinion family is my English is not good enough. I'm too nervous. Sorry, that excuse is not going to work.
No, it's not true that I'm too nervous. It's not true. It doesn't stress me well, I wouldn't say I'm not a native English speaker. No.
You're speaking well enough. You definitely speak well enough to be a great influence here around Aaron's Opinion for sure. Yeah, definitely. Thanks. Yeah. Definitely.
But I wouldn't say I'm English. No, it's not true. I'm French and well.
Oh, and, sure.
Well, yes.
Sure. Absolutely.
I may have some words which I don't know, which I don't understand, which I don't get. But,
well, that's how language is always. That's what it will always be forever. It will never be your first language. So, yeah. No. Have you been to England at least? Because their English is very interesting.
I did a placement in Worcester, New College, Worcester, which is a very well-known school for blind people.
Oh, really?
For 1 month, and I went to family to do a linguistic stay, homestay for blind people, which was it was a very good structure, which doesn't exist anymore, I think, which was called I Talk English, but IEYE. I Talk English.
Oh, that's clever. Okay, cool.
And there was a couple of teachers who would adapt the material in braille and large print for people who need it. And they would teach in the morning, for example, and in the afternoon you would make some activities you chose with the family. Yes.
Right.
So it was a one-to-one course. Very good.
Really good. When I was younger and first learning French, we were always looking for programs like this for me, to be able to have these types of things. My mother, it's funny, it's a cute story. Both my parents studied French extensively. And my mother, when she was in Paris, about 40 years ago when she was a young person. She had this host family, and apparently it was this one little old lady that was really mean, and the little old lady stole her suitcase, and my mother was traumatized and had to get some big strong boy to go help her to steal the suitcase back, and there was a whole so ever since then, my mother has always had a phobia of host families and weird people, things like that. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Mostly for foreigners learning languages. I mean, obviously the main demand is English. So it's always harder to find host families and these types of programs for learning French. I mean, they exist, but there's schools in France, of course, but it's harder to find
one-on-one. Of course, you have
the
Alliance Française, but everywhere in the world. You have also our French Institute, but it can be expensive.
Right.
It's a bit of money you have to spend.
Yeah, I went to Coeur de France.
Yeah. You mentioned it, but I didn't know about it.
Okay. Yeah,
but, yes, I didn't answer your question. I wouldn't like to be hired by any company now because I can make a living for myself.
Well, good.
And I know I wouldn't say I have a problem with authority, but I want to do what I want and when I want.
Oh, okay.
And take holiday when I want.
Do you hear how silly that sounds? I don't have a problem with authority and leaders, except I want to do what I want when I want to do it, and I want to take time off when I want to do it.
Yeah.
Okay. Trust me, Sophie. I think I know you have a problem with authority. I think you definitely have a problem with authority. You just showed me what a problem you have with authority.
Maybe you should change that sentence in the podcast.
That's why we have these raw conversations, these endearing things that we say. Absolutely. That's totally fine. Yeah, we always here at Aaron's Opinion, we always love to have these dynamic sentences and these dynamic interactions because this is what other blind people really need. They really need to have real talks and real conversations. I've found that there have been people in the past here at Aaron's Opinion who've simply needed to talk about stuff. It's medicinal for people to have a place to talk about things that are important, and we need to be able to come together and talk about things. So yeah.
I used to listen to a podcast which was very good, which doesn't exist anymore in English. It was called Living Blindfully. I don't know
yes.
New Zealander guy.
He's wonderful.
About technology.
He's wonderful. We at Aaron's Opinion, we've always wanted to interview him. Yeah, he's incredible. Now I'm not an expert about the guy. He shut that. I think he ended that podcast.
Yes, because he worked for the Blind Federation or something like that.
You got it. Yeah, you listened to that episode. Exactly. So it's not your imagination. It's not because you were listening from France. It's because that podcast simply was shut down. Out of his choice. He chose to stop doing that, to focus on his new job.
It was very good. Very good.
It was always entertaining and always informative. And I certainly, now, did I agree with everything that he said? No, but I always enjoyed him. I always enjoyed listening to his perspectives.
No, but he never was contemptuous, never had, although I think he was very talented and gifted for many things.
He is a very gifted person. He's a very interesting person in New Zealand for sure. Yeah. So, I mean, outside of, in addition to Guillaume, our great friend Guillaume, have you found any other blind people who are podcasters in France or no?
Yes, I know two of them, not personally, but two people who run podcasts about new technology. But apart from that, no.
Right. So there's probably very few.
I think there are not that many.
Right. Yeah, probably not. Or if there are podcasts in France, they're English ones that people are listening to from other countries. Yeah, probably so. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think.
Absolutely. So, really what I want to know as we walk to the end of a beautiful conversation here is, so Sophie, thank you so much for taking time out of your afternoon for joining us today. Much appreciated. Pleasure. If you can, and I think we really covered the whole power of your magnificent mind that you've been given and your magnificent ability to help other people in France. It's so worth celebrating. So, of course, if you can ask me only one more question to really make me sweat, to see if I'm worth my salt as a podcaster, what do you want to ask me?
I'll ask you what we could ask in a job interview. How do you see you in 5 years, let's say?
I see myself, although I don't I would say that although I don't give out the future, that's one thing that I would tell, is that I don't generally talk about my future goals, except for the goals that involve continuing to podcast for people, continuing to give the gift of podcasting to other people like you who are deserving of having great conversations and are deserving of this privilege to have your story heard, you know? So the answer is God only knows what the future holds in the next 5 years. I can't even fathom what the future holds. But what it holds for me is more teaching, more language learning, hopefully more podcasting, and just continuing to maintain a podcast presence is painfully important to me. So that's where I really see myself.
Good.
If somebody really wants to get in touch with Sophie Renault and, send you a
yes, no problem.
Esperanto message,
you can ask me, but please don't give me my email like that. Ask me, tell me who it is.
Okay.
And I'll decide.
Okay, that's fine. So I would say click the link in the description. I can copy and paste that little paragraph you gave me, right? That can be the description, yes. Right? Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, very good. Well, Sophie Renault, it's been an absolute honor to have you here in the Aaron's Opinion family. Yeah. And seriously, please, you should start your own podcast all about Esperanto and language acquisition. You really should.
Oh, no. I don't fancy. No.
Oh, yes. Oh, I fancy it. Oh, I know so. I think me and Guillaume can kind of coerce you into it. I think we got to get you into the podcast.
You can try, but I'm hard to be converted to something. You can try it, but
I'll talk Guillaume.
As we say in French, bon courage. How do you say in English?
Good luck.
Good luck. Yes, good luck.
And bon courage à vous. And seriously, have a wonderful rest of your afternoon in Toulouse. And of course, until next time, as we say here at Aaron's Opinion, absolutely help one person today and help 1 million people tomorrow.